Chaos theory is a system of mathematics that analyzes how a small alteration to a system's original parameters, like a breeze on a butterfly's wings, can translate into an unforeseen outcome, like a tornado. Chaos theory attempts to explain the behavior of dynamical systems. In the world of physics, a dynamical system is defined as a particle or ensemble of particles whose state varies over time and thus obeys differential equations involving time derivatives. An example of a system would be weather. A dynamical system is highly sensitive to an initial condition, also referred to as a seed value. This is a starting value, or a starting point, if you will. If I have a still guitar string, this is the initial condition. When the string is plucked and vibrates, it has become dynamic. Chaos theory seeks to unlock underlying patterns of why a small adjustment in one state of a system causes a dramatic change in a later state. For instance, will the flap of a butterfly's wings in Brazil cause a tornado in Texas? Chaos theory teaches us to expect the unexpected. It's also the title of one of the greatest video games ever.
Really? Can you feel the tension in the air right now?
Ubisoft Montreal releases their magnum opus, Splinter Cell Chaos Theory. I love stealth games. Not like, love. And if you watch the first two parts of this series, you'll know that I love the first two Splinter Cell games very, very much. With respect to those titles, Chaos Theory surpasses them in every possible way. A clean demolition. To this day, Chaos Theory remains not only the crowning achievement in the Splinter Cell franchise, but a title that some would argue is one of the greatest games of all time, period. Every single aspect of the old games has been enhanced, upgraded, or otherwise supplanted in the name of excellence. Don't let the shiny visuals, guns, bombs, and passive machismo fool you. Splinter Cell 3 is, first and foremost, a harmonious artistic collaboration produced by a team of incredibly talented people that left a permanent indentation on video games in general.
I can feel it all the way down in my plums, getting all swollen.
Compared to the relatively bland tales weaved in the first two games, Sam Fisher's third outing is decidedly intriguing and has a more personal touch, with the return of Douglas Shetland, a character first introduced in the second game, Pandora Tomorrow. I briefly touched on this, but Shetland and Sam Fisher, our primary protagonist, have a close bond formed during prior military service when both characters were conducting joint operations in Kuwait during the Gulf War. Shetland's return in Chaos Theory adds an emotional layer to an otherwise solid plot about rogue elements in allied nations bringing the world to the cusp of a third Great War. Sam's third outing has him infiltrating stages set in Japan, South Korea, North Korea, Peru, and New York City. I won't spoil the ending or the extent of Shetland's overall arc, but there are some genuinely poignant themes about governments and empires becoming bloated and sick due to corrupt criminals running the show. And the need to radically purge useless entities to wipe the slate clean. The script and the actors that bring it to life do an excellent job of conveying downtrodden war heroes tired of seeing young men die in the field of battle for their wealthy corporate overlords. Some may argue that Shetland isn't even really a villain.
Who wants a mustache ride?
Running on a modified Unreal Engine 2.5, Chaos Theory makes the two prior games in the series look primitive by comparison. Ubi was able to pull off some incredible new tricks for this one, utilizing features like high dynamic range lighting, parallax mapping, normal mapping, heat distortion, and ragdoll physics, which adds an incredible amount of weight when busting a bad guy's grape. Lighting and shadows are still, 17 years later, breathtaking. But it's a Splinter Cell game. This isn't new. Chaos Theory contains a ton, and I mean a whole heck of a lot, of little graphical touches that elevate it high above most other games from around the same time. Notice in this clip, as Sam remains in the rain, his suit gets soaked. Also, look at the amazing texture work on this tent. I remember reading at the time, this looks so good that Microsoft wanted this to be an Xbox 360 launch title, as is. When Sam dons his goggles, the screen now has an overlay that mimics what Sam would see through his tubes. The new animations for Sam are simply beyond. As Sam closes the gap on an enemy, his muscles begin to contract and his body tightens like a cobra prior to striking. When you stop him in his tracks, he'll even assume a relaxed posture after a short period, as if he was trying to conserve energy. These little flourishes are just so smooth and do so much to enhance the feeling of actually controlling a person as opposed to a series of hitboxes and wireframes. Sam can even pull off a sassy walk if he's feeling like an extra sneaky little bitch. Despite being released all those years ago, Chaos Theory is still stunning. I recorded my footage using the PC version this time, running at a high resolution, sporting 13AG's widescreen mod, and with all of the special bells and whistles cranked to the max, and it's startling. However, I also dusted off the original Xbox disc that I've had for a decade and a half, and recorded some OG Xbox footage. Due to the vast amount of customization and the power of the platform, the PC version is obviously superior. Be that as it may, the original Xbox version is still absolutely gorgeous. If you're a younger gamer or aren't a gamer at all, it's hard to describe how good looking this was at the time, especially for a 6th generation console game. More importantly, the original Xbox version runs like butter and plays just as well as I remember. There are definitely some quirks when I was running the PC version. At a high FPS, the cloth physics sometimes just went apeshit. On any version, faces are still unusual.
Dude, what the fuck?
And sometimes, heads and necks just sort of do what they want.
I'm an inspector, out of my own pocket. No, this big shot, this vice...
Yes, Satan?
Additionally, there is an odd thing I noticed while playing. During the level set in Displace International's headquarters, I noticed that, in the weight room, there are these little tiny incline bench presses. They look like they would fit very small people. Not little people, as you may think, just tiny people. Then, while wandering the upper levels, as I looked out the window, I noticed these oddly small buildings. And then it hit me. Oh my god. There is a secret society of miniature people that live in tiny penthouses inside of tiny skyscrapers and go to work at Displace International, where they zero their little rifles and pump tiny iron. This is all to distract us from who's really pulling the strings.
I don't need to see that.
I have issues.
Never mind the wisecracks, Ventura.
I can't overstate this. The artists at Ubisoft Montreal really had their shit together with this one.
God bless you, Canadian people. You're so fucking nice, eh?
However, a new coat of paint on an old hoopty isn't enough to make a game fun to play. Thankfully, when it comes to the gameplay, Ubisoft really came out swinging.
I said no. Let the boy watch.
Of all the genuine superlatives that I can and will shower this game with, the gameplay in Splinter Cell 3 is the apex of the stealth action genre. There are so many improvements to the core gameplay framework established by the first two games, and so many little special additions that enrich the experience. They're nearly too great to enumerate individually, but we can try. There are little additions that add spice to the game, like Sam being able to blow out candles, as well as using his newly acquired combat knife to cut through various soft materials to further expand the environment. Sam will look up at walls as he walks around, as if he's measuring for a split jump. The split jump was removed in the game, so it's a neat little reference. Levels now have multiple branching pathways. Granted, you're still moving in the same general direction towards your end goal, but these new varied traversal options can really add replayability to what is otherwise a linear experience. To help navigate these more intricate layouts, Chaos Theory also introduces a three-dimensional map with visible objective markers. You may not necessarily have to depend on it, but honestly, it helped me get unstuck once or twice, and it's a whole lot better than the useless maps you had in the older games. In a series first, you can select a loadout prior to starting your mission. A stealth loadout gives you more non-lethal equipment and fewer bullets, and you get a few flash grenades. An assault loadout grants you extra ammunition for your primary and secondary weapon systems and a frag grenade. Redding's recommendations are basically a balance between the two, and gives you what the developers may be suggesting as to what would be best for the current level.
Does that make sense or no?
Speaking of weapons, the FN57 pistol has been replaced by the SC pistol, which now comes with a built-in electronics jammer, which is an incredibly useful tool for creating distractions and impromptu shadowy pathways without making noise and creating mayhem. It's not without consequence, however, as if enemies are investigating a dark area and they're in a state of suspicion, they'll often brandish flashlights or flares to illuminate the area. Sam uses his tools like another fictional hero, Batman. As you carefully toy with the enemy from the darkness, they become increasingly fraught with dread, and audibly start to panic with near hysteria as the tension builds. It's just another subtle way that Ubisoft cleverly builds Sam Fisher into an apex hunter, on par with the Caped Crusader himself. Sam also now has the ability to swap shoulders when presenting his weapon, which may not seem like a big deal, but it's yet another addition to the long list of small improvements that go a long way in setting Chaos Theory on a higher pedestal than the first two titles. A great deal of the frustrating trial and error from the past games has been mitigated without removing the tension of being caught. Instead of the old 3 alarms and it's game over trope, triggering alarms simply makes the game harder, with enemy awareness being raised, and they'll do things like don body armor and helmets in response to your folly. The game itself references this in a meta exchange between Lambert and Fisher.
Don't tell me. 3 alarms and the mission is over?
Of course not. This is no video game, Fisher. But you don't want the whole place alerted to your presence. Keep it under control.
This opens up gameplay options and permits the player to be more of an overt combatant, should you choose to play that style. On that note, the combat has been refined a fair bit. Like I mentioned in part 1 of the series, sometimes you just want to shut your brain off and start blasting. Chaos Theory accommodates this playstyle much better. As previously mentioned, you can select the assault loadout prior to beginning a mission, granting you extra ammo and frag grenades. Sam even gets an underslung shotgun attachment for the SC-20K this time. And it's incredibly powerful and satisfying to let rip. You can also attach a foregrip to the rifle to expedite stabilization, making shootouts smoother without simplifying the game into an arcade shoot-'em-up. What of the nuts and bolts, point-and-shoot mechanics? Firstly, I'm playing with a mouse and keyboard with a high frame rate, so naturally the aiming is going to be a bit easier and smoother, and it is excellent. But playing the Xbox version again didn't feel like a giant leap backwards, and either way you can play this title, the third-person combat is much better than in the original Splinter Cell and Pandora Tomorrow. Everything just feels that much quicker and more graceful. With use of all the previously mentioned combat toys and lack of game-ending alarms, playing loud is now a viable option, instead of just reloading a checkpoint in frustration. But the AI is no joke, and on hard and expert difficulties, Sam will die quickly, and if you rush in recklessly, you'll be punished repeatedly. So it's advised that you remain prudent and pick your battles. And in the end, this is a Splinter Cell game, and stealth will always be the greatest method of play. To that end, Chaos Theory might be the most brilliant stealth action video game ever. I'm as big of a Metal Gear fanboy as they come. Seriously, I have a miniature shrine in my house to Metal Gear, complete with a replica suppressor stamped with the Foxhound logo. I can't wait to someday do a massive deep dive on that series, should anyone be interested. That said, when it comes to pure stealth gaming, Chaos Theory may be the head of the pride. All of the jank, kink, and clunk of the first 2 titles have been ironed out. Something about this game that I really love is the ability to finish it without killing a single enemy. Save for 2 scripted sequences where you're given no other choice, and with the more open level design, you can finish the game with nary a disturbance, much less outright killing. You can still grab characters and knock them out the old-fashioned way, if you prefer, but Sam now has the ability to approach his targets from multiple angles and drop them quickly with a well-placed palm or knee strike. This also works with Sam's newly acquired combat knife, modeled on the Gerber Guardian backup, a double-sided 3.4-inch fixed thing of frightening beauty. Along with the multi-angle takedowns, Ubi went and one-upped that. If you incapacitate an enemy, permanently or otherwise, simply continue to hold the trigger or mouse button, and Sam will smoothly transfer the enemy into an over-the-shoulder carry for a seamless walk-off. This speeds up the moment-to-moment gameplay significantly, and makes playing the old games a slight chore, honestly. Interrogations have also been increased, giving Michael Ironside a lot more dialogue to play with in various contexts, which encouraged me to take hold of as many NPCs as I could just to hear these cleverly written interactions. Additionally, you can now hack computer terminals and retinal scanners. Even better is doing it remotely using your EEV goggles. Being able to lurk in the shadows while unlocking a high security area is so slick. You can still collect key codes to doors or press a dude's eyeballs into a scanner like old times, but these new mechanics further encourage that freedom of movement and choice that Splinter Cell 3 offers you. But either way you choose to play, the game introduces yet another new mechanic for dedicated players to delve into: the statistics screen. Presented at the end of each mission, you can see which level you've just finished, the time it took, and how stealthy or destructive you were, calculated into a success rating. The greater number of zeros on the list, the greater your end level percentage is. Killing enemies, being identified as an intruder, raising alarms, and leaving bodies out in the open mar your percentage significantly. It doesn't affect the story or future levels in any way, but for purists attempting the ultimate stealth run, this screen is a great addition. You can see here I played like utter shit. As much as I love the first two Splinter Cell games, Chaos Theory's gameplay is sublime. It obliterates the other two. Simple as that. But there's one more gameplay addition, and it feeds directly into our next topic.
No contact has yet been made with either the astronauts aboard the ISS or with the shuttle which is docked to the station.
Stop fucking with our Toyotas! Come down and buy them like a man!
In addition to the return of the light meter that indicates how visible you are to the enemy, Chaos Theory introduces the sound meter. Nestled just below the light meter, this multi-block indicator will not only tell you how much noise you're making, but the level of noise present in the environment, allowing you to gauge the kind of din you can stir while remaining undetected. When thunder crashes, it will conceal a gunshot. The sound meter meshes so organically with the light and shadow dynamic and is yet another tool that Ubi gave the player to increase their control of how they play through each level. The barbaric, gruesome, and amazing game, Manhunt, had a similar sound mechanic that preceded this one, but Chaos Theory's meter is a bit more intricate and refined, and complements the sneaking incredibly well.
Noisy down here.
Oh, my!
Makes it easy to sneak up on people.
Sir, you're making a lot of noise.
Right. Hello? Is this thing on then?
It's on. I'm here. Have you been briefed?
Whatever. Listen, this is a Mason Wells 88. Each one is unique. You want to get a butcher's up this girl's skirt. First thing you need to do is authorise an opening.
How do I do that?
The bank president and the treasurer will each have an authorisation lock in their office. There'll be another one in the security office. You'll need to disable all three.
Okay.
Voice acting in Splinter Cell 3 is on point. Sam Fisher, Irving Lambert, Anna Grimsdottir, they all return, alongside some new allies and villains. Off the bat, thank God, Claudia Bezzo returns to voice Grimsdottir, who voiced the character in the original game. Claudia's performance is the perfect blend of bookworm, professional, and kid sister. She's charming and endearing, but can absolutely hold her own in a battle of wits against Sam.
And this business with displays. I know you don't want to hear it, but I think Shetland's dirty. The kidnapping of Morgenholt, the protection of Zerkezi, relocating him after the blackout, it stinks.
He stinks, and I don't like him.
Watch your fire, Sam. Those boys aren't expecting to see you and they'll attack on sight. Do not, I repeat, do not kill any of them.
I'll be careful.
Good.
Returning to the role of Lambert is Don Jordan, whose voice so perfectly encapsulates the character, and his interactions with Fisher, of which there are many, are fantastic. Ubisoft really dialed up the back and forth between Sam and Lambert in this game, giving the actors a lot more to chew on, and the writing is genuinely clever. You feel like these men have a long, respectful relationship, forged through very difficult lines of work. Lambert is still the boss, But he doesn't need to talk down to Sam. The two are professionals, and Sam knows his job. Michael Ironside returns again to voice Fisher, and this is easily his best portrayal yet. I mentioned in part 2 that Ironside was finding his groove with this character. In Chaos Theory, he wears the character like a natural extension of himself. It sounds so natural and comes off like a real dude.
Bad news.
Ah! Okay, very funny, Tahoe. Hey! Oh!
I'm not Tahoe.
Who? Oh!
The writers gave Ironside a wonderful blend of honesty and humor, in stark contrast to when Sam is downright menacing.
I already don't like you. Don't make it worse for yourself.
Who are you?
Shut up. Why did you torture Morgan Holt?
Lacerda told us to.
Why? What does he want to know?
Math problems. Programmer stuff. I don't get it.
You're just the stupid one who likes to hurt people, huh?
Exactly.
Can you think of a reason why the world wouldn't be a better place without you?
Please. I
didn't think so. It's dangerous back here in the dark, alone.
Oh God, don't hurt me.
Tell me something useful and I won't break your arms.
I don't know.
Little quips during gameplay, like Sam mentioning how an area stinks, or groaning in frustration when an alarm is triggered, only flesh out the character further. Suffice it to say, nobody could play this character like Michael Ironside. It's perfect. Some of the voice acting in the game is not on that level.
And who are you?
Such a rush you're in. Fancy some tea, do you?
Lambert, something weird is happening.
I'll say.
All told, most actors turn in a great performance. The sound effects are crisp and solid, and the soundtrack, well, the soundtrack is incredible.
Myself into two things. It's Two Fingers being a very sort of just about.
Chaos Theory is an original composition by Amon Tobin, an electronic musician, composer, and producer. Brazilian by birth, Tobin had been living in Montreal, Quebec during the early 2000s when he had been contracted to record the soundtrack for Splinter Cell 3. The tracks were recorded in 4 similar parts with various intensities so that Ubisoft could use the track as a nearly living canvas that can shift and mold to the situation that the player is facing in real time. Whether you're slipping through a cargo ship undetected or blasting enemies on the rooftops of Seoul, South Korea, the soundtrack will ramp up or down in accordance with the action.
So, there'll always be Two Fingers tracks because I just sort of need to do them.
Making a video game soundtrack is quite a challenging task for the artist and requires a great deal of balance. What I mean is, a soundtrack is absolutely all the better when it's memorable. I imagine that as a game developer, you want all aspects of your project to be elevated to their highest potential. However, the music has to strike a middle ground between memorable and overbearing. It can't overshadow the rest of the elements of the game. Therein lies the beauty of Amon Tobin's work for Chaos Theory. The tracks are all unique and unforgettable, but fit wholly with the rest of the pillars that Ubisoft has constructed. Additional contributions to the soundtrack come from Jesper Kyd, a Danish composer responsible for some of the greatest video game music ever created. With these two musical heavyweights attached to the project, it's no wonder that the soundtrack for Chaos Theory is generally regarded as having changed gaming soundtracks forever. And that's not hyperbole. On a side note, the music from Chaos Theory is one of the reasons I create my own music for these videos. It even has bitchin' rock music for an all-out Sam jam. Hit it!
What's the first thing Hillary Clinton's gonna do when she gets in office? Get Get back! No!
Of course, nothing is perfect. And even a game as amazing and memorable as Chaos Theory has its issues. As incredible as the soundtrack is, and as much as I admire the real-time dynamic changes that Ubisoft uses it for, sometimes it's actually really obnoxious. Occasionally, when an enemy is merely suspicious of something and begins to investigate, there will be a massive clatter of drums, cymbals, and string arrangements bellowing out. It's good music, but super annoying when you're simply trying to lure an opponent or distract them, and you're rewarded with a cacophony of loud, splashing blasts of sound. It's this loud on purpose. They make it this loud on purpose. I can't sneak. It's too loud.
Sorry.
Control yourself, Sam. You're a professional. Prove it.
There is still a certain amount of trial and error present, which is the case with any game with stealth elements. It's much more infrequent than in previous games, but it does happen and it's still irritating. The final level in particular has this bizarre segment where, if the enemy is alerted, we'll automatically knock Fisher out and capture him. You can pick your handcuffs and break out, which is a really cool little sequence. But the odd part is, the sequence isn't scripted to happen, and you can sneak through this part of the level without getting arrested. It's just fashioned in such a way that it's almost unavoidable, and it's corny. With that said, the biggest problem with Splinter Cell Chaos Theory, and I almost hate to admit this, is that the last 3 or so levels are a pretty big drop-off in terms of quality. We start in the lighthouse level, set off the coast of Peru, and this stage is iconic. It was the initial demo released to the public to show the game off, and it's still incredible to this day. The Maria Narcissa cargo ship level follows next, which really shows off the open-ended map design that Ubi was striving for. Then, my personal favorite, where you infiltrate a bank and eventually break into the vault. It's so good. There are 2 phenomenal levels set in New York City, and Sam even breaks into a secure military base in North Korea. All incredible and highly replayable. But by the time we get into South Korea, near the demilitarized zone, the level of trial and error and cramped, boring level designs mildly spoils the experience. The bathhouse level succeeding the DMZ has the coolest presentation and could have easily been the best level, but it becomes a highly annoying, save-scumming and quick-load adventure with the various civilians scattered around, all ready to spring the alarm button the second they see you. The end sequence of this level, which is an all-out war between 2 factions, is awful and annoying if you're trying to be stealthy. As mentioned already, the final level in Kokubo Sosho has the annoying arrested sequence, which again stinks on ice. But the stage itself is just kind of boring all around. A giant office complex with a few guards scattered about. The architecture and level layout is pretty awesome. I do love the ultra-secure cube office deep in the guts of the building, and the music is my favorite of the entire assembly. The very last sequence of the game is pretty cool, and I'm so glad they didn't go with a hacky boss battle where you whittle down a health bar. I won't spoil it, but after the segment, the epilogue cutscene plays, and it's just the main characters having a chuckle about their sneaky adventures. Cut to credits. My complaints about Splinter Cell 3 are pretty minor, and even my favorite video games have plenty of flaws. Don't get me wrong, this game deserves your valuable time. It really, really does.
You can spare 30 seconds for some simple dignity.
Around this point, I was going to talk about the Versus multiplayer and the cooperative campaign in Chaos Theory. The online servers for both have been officially closed for many years now, There are ways to play the game online through some third-party emulation software, but as I mentioned in part 2 of this series, it's really rare to be able to fill a lobby up. I don't want to do another long reflection on it. I'll just say that the amazing multiplayer from Pandora Tomorrow returned in Chaos Theory. It was utterly incredible, and I'm so grateful that I got to play it back in the game's heyday. The gameplay was perfect. The maps were amazing, and the memories live forever. That's all there is to it. Like the competitive PvP, the co-op campaign was incredible, and I'm so happy that I got to play through it many years ago with my brother. Splinter Cell co-op is so good, and it's such a shame that more games like it don't exist in this day and age. Although official servers are down, if you find an Xbox copy, you can still play split screen with a friend. If you're inclined, I will say that it's absolutely worth it. It's truly great and really kind of deserves its own video. Maybe someday. There is sort of a spiritual successor to Spies vs. Mercs in development right now called Spectre, being developed in Toronto by a studio called Symbiosis. I'm cautiously optimistic, but the gameplay shown thus far looks decent, and the independent team seems determined to capture the old look and feel of Splinter Cell's wonderful multiplayer suite from all those years ago. And I'll tell you, I'll be the first in line if it lives up to its potential. Fingers crossed. I could go on and on about these modes, and about Splinter Cell 3 in general, for a very long time. But frankly, the script is getting close to 5,000 words, and I think you get the point by now.
What? It's your turn to patrol.
Splinter Cell Chaos Theory is one of the finest video games ever developed. It's obviously not perfect, nor is it for everyone, but it's as close to a perfect stealth action game as has ever been released. All the stars aligned. When it comes to reflecting on the first 3 Splinter Cell games and the era of life that we lived, in order to sum up the emotion that I've bottled up and stored forever, I'm reminded of a Hunter S. Thompson quote. There was madness in any direction, at any hour. You could strike sparks anywhere. We had all the momentum. We were riding the crest of a high and beautiful wave. So now, you can go up on a steep hill in Las Vegas and look west. And with the right kind of eyes, you can almost see the high water mark. That place where the wave finally broke and rolled back. Thank you for watching.
There is one more thing. It's been emotional.